Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I'd like to continue on with the 31 days of cop films and gangster films from the year 1970 to the present day. And my hope is that this can afford us, you and I, my dear friends, with the opportunity to speak about as many films as possible that span this wide scope of years. So, and that is the plan throughout these 31 days. So one video per each genre, that of the cop genre or the cop film genre, and one for the gangster film genre. So in that spirit, I'd like to focus today, and specifically this video, on the gangster film genre. And I have a film here which is described as being from 1993. This is a film that I have spoken about on this channel previously in a video discussion in the past. It is a film from a filmmaker whose work that I admire tremendously. In particular, this film, or as an example, I should say, this film from this filmmaker who is also starring in this film. As we have the director and also the star, although there's a very interesting dynamic as to this particular filmmaker, artist, and performer's off-screen persona or persona behind the camera versus his persona before the camera or in front of the camera. And I'm speaking of the performer, artist, comedian, filmmaker, director, editor, writer, and all-around super genius, talented artist extraordinaire whose name is Takeshi Kitano. And his on-screen persona, or when he's on screen, he oftentimes is referred to as Beat Takeshi. And so in that spirit, my dear friends, let me now speak about this film from Takeshi Kitano, or Kitano Takeshi, and starring Beat Takeshi is as the main character. And the character that he plays is a gangster or a member of the Yakuza who is embroiled in this very, actually labyrinthine plot of double-cross and betrayal. And we see how this very steely-eyed and tough as nails and incredibly smart and astute type of gangster character, Yakuza character, enforcer type, handles the situation in that brilliant Kitano way that we have come to know and come to expect from the world of Kitano, especially the gangster film or the Yakuza film in the hands of the great Takeshi Kitano. I am speaking of this film. This is the work which is Sonatine, or in Japanese it is referred to as Sonachine. And again, it stars Beat Takeshi as this Yakuza gangster character who is dealing with a type of warfare or gang warfare situation that is seemingly escalating to the points of violence. And this involves also his maybe temporary relocation from the central location of the cityscape to Okinawa. And the sandy beaches, the beautiful weather, the tranquil nature, the backdrop, and the foliage, and the water, and the sea, and the air, and the sky, and the sun. And so here we have a really interesting dynamic that's set up in this brilliant film, Sonachine, which is essentially many things. We have the opportunity for different types of environmental landscapes that can enter into the cinematic arena, both, as I say, in terms of the dark neon-lit cityscapes for some of the picture, and then for other parts of the picture we have the bright, open, and almost in an interesting way desolate and deserted and isolated areas that we see depicted here with regard to the Okinawa scenes. And also in that vein, or in that spirit, we have this very, I think, wonderfully paradoxical dynamic that is also set up. On the one hand, we have these sudden bursts of violence. We have the very almost Machiavellian maneuverings of the players that are on the Yakuza field, as it were, and from the lower rungs all the way up to the higher levels of power, and everything in between. We see how there might be some larger forces at work, and maybe those larger unseen forces might be said to be trying to manipulate the situations to work towards their advantages respectively. And maybe those working towards advantages might be to or against the interests of characters like the Beat Takeshi character, Murakami character, thus leading to a very widely affecting and quite colossal clash and confrontation indeed between these two forces. Because on the one hand, you might have these maybe unseen, hidden hand forces that might be at work with regard to trying to bring about an end to the various protagonists or anti-heroes that we meet and we become associated with as the film progresses. On the other hand, Beat Takeshi, as the character that he is, as a type of nothing to lose attitude, as a type of carefree, almost to the point of being so almost nonchalant about his reckoning, and also the way in which he meets out force and a type of amoral sense of justice, or perhaps a twisted or sense of a moral sense of justice whose morality is based in the deep dark underbelly of the criminal underworld, of which he is undoubtedly a integral part in the context of this great film Sonachine. And so in that rubric, or in that computation or dynamic, we have many themes appearing at once. So we have the idea of let's say hiding out, and we also have these very intensely rendered characters, and we see quote unquote their off time, just taking a break, being bored. And what do when gangsters are bored? They decide to go to the beach and play like kids, play like children, and have fun and games while they're waiting for time to pass. So this becomes an interesting part of the, I think, changing, or the the changing structure or dynamic of the film. Namely, we have different types of wonderfully placed contradictions at work. We have adult characters who are playing with life or death stakes. Guns and other bursts of violence, of course, lead to tragic or significant consequences for victims or prey, etc. So it's a life and death stake situation that the adults are playing in. At the same time, these are the same characters who, when they are bored, or when they are waiting, or when they're just happen to be hiding out, waiting for time to pass and pass and pass, while they are sitting below the wonderfully bright and warm sunshine of the Okinawa sky. What are they going to do? They are going to play like children. They are going to play games and have fun and just do make-believe and carry out things in their imagination. So it's adults and children. The idea of playing make-believe versus really life or death stakes. And that type of wonderfully achieved contradiction is one of or paradoxical points, is one of the ways in which this film, I think, manages to balance so well these differing tones or styles to great effect. And it leads to a further sense of emotional investment, as well as a sense of pathos, as well as a sense of a real type of say attachment, because it's this idea of adults who maybe are just wanting to play like children that gives it a sense of accessibility. And I think that is a feeling that is that can be understood by many a viewer who watch this film, for the first time, or for on repeat viewing, whatever the case may be. Now, this idea of contradiction or paradox is also existing in, I would suggest, other aspects of this film, such as the way in which violence is depicted. Sometimes we see it directly expressed head-on in terms of what we see on screen. versus other moments when we see the violence or sudden bursts of energy implied or taking place, off screen through the magic of, say, an edit or cut or a sound that's applied while we are looking elsewhere, while the camera is directing our attention elsewhere. There we see, or we don't see, bursts of energy that occur. So this is also, I think, this type of a paradox is very much a part of the Kitano style. As a type of a stillness to his frame, while at the same time providing a means by which we as viewers can be suddenly caught off guard and surprised, because if we are acclimated to this idea of stillness and a type of purposely applied inertia, when there is a sudden burst of energy that occurs in the context of such purposely applied inertia, then we are really caught off guard to the point of being truly, truly shocked. So that is one, I think, really effective byproduct of this type of styling, which is, I think, as I say, purposefully applied and beautifully poetic. It also speaks to the nature of the power of cinema itself in the hands of Kitano. The idea being there's so much power and might when we are imagining what we see. I'm sorry. When we are imagining the things that we think are occurring within the world of the film, or say beyond the boundaries of the frame, it creates a sense of depth, and it creates a sense of, it might be, of course, ultimately that beautiful type of cinema magic trick or illusion, of course, but all the same, that is the great beauty or power of cinema, things that it shows and also things that it implies or that it suggests. And it's that power of suggestion that leads us on to the imagination. I would suggest that the cinema of Kitano, as a film like Sonatine or Sonatine would suggest, the films of Kitano really empower one's imaginative capabilities as a viewer, to the point that we are really going along for the ride. And sometimes it's amazing to think just how much we become affected by these really these almost tranquil, the way in which the camera is positioned and also editing is used to great effect. And this is, as I say, the great power, one of the great powers and skills of Kitano's work. And it is present in a work like Sonatine in volumes. It really is. It's amazing to think about how much, or indeed how little, is shown, how much is hidden from view, from direct view. But the impact is so great and so mighty, and so filled with a sense of truly a deeply rendered shock, that it makes Kitano's work, like Sonatine, a really eye-opening thing indeed. And it's a great exemplar for the power of cinema. The illusory, or not illusory, the illusion and the magic trick that is very much involved. And when it's done to great effect, my goodness, how great an effect that is. And I would say that the effects of Sonatine in watching this film has a whole, it has almost an infinite amount of that truly profound effect on the viewer. And it is also funny. It is also a very funny and witty film. It has those visual gag humor points. It has that highbrow humor sense. It has the lowbrow humor sense. This is all part of the package of Beat Takeshi the performer, because as we know, he is very famous in Japan, also as a comedian and as a TV presenter and performer. And part of that persona is Beat Takeshi the comedian, and it's also here as well. And that also adds, I think, a wonderful dynamic to the balancing act between seemingly differing tones or styles, that of violence and shock and action, and also the comedic aspects that seem almost to be playing with a type of on a meta level, playing with the viewer's understanding of who Beat Takeshi is in terms of his on-screen persona versus the persona that Beat Takeshi, the actor, is playing within the universe of the film. And then also we understand he's also working behind the scenes or behind the camera as well. So there is a multi-level effect that is very meta. And I think an understanding or a knowledge to a certain, even to a very limited degree, I think a knowledge of Beat Takeshi, the performer, and who he was and he is during especially his early stages of his career as a comedian, I think make for I think really awe-inspiring and enlightening viewing when one sees Sonatine in that light, and we see the shock of the various mixes of sudden thrills and chills of the Yakuza storyline, while at the same time we are reminded of the on-screen persona antics of Beat Takeshi the comedian. And it's all here in wonderful doses and in a great sense of entertainment that is also artistically rendered, and it has the way in which it uses stillness and quiet and also tranquility to great effect, either to suggest that direct metaphor or to create a sense of irony. And again, going back to the way in which this mixes styles and tones and beats to great effect. It truly is a brilliant mix of differing things that are seemingly contradictory, seemingly paradoxical, but when we step back and we view this film Sonachine as a whole, not only are we entertained by the gangster element, not only are we entertained by the Beat Takeshi element, I think we become enthralled by just how powerful an example this is of Japanese cinema from the late 20th century, as well as the cinema of Beat Takeshi, as well, or Takeshi Kitano, as well as the cinema of this genre, the Yakuza gangster film, as well as an example of Japanese cinema writ large. This is a brilliant work, and if you haven't seen this already, I strongly urge you to give it a chance. This is the work directed by Takeshi Kitano, starring Beat Takeshi, and it is known as Sonatine or Sonachine. Okay, my dear friends, so that's it for now, and so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.